Hi, Discovery class. Thanks for dropping by. My topic today is one of the Old Testament texts. Now, you understand that the Old Testament is made up of 3 books of wisdom. The book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Job, and the book of Proverbs. Now, we don't use that term wisdom in our society anymore, do you? Probably the word that we would use that's more common is the word common sense. So, if you were to make reference to the Old Testament books like Ecclesiastes, Job, Proverbs, you would probably call them the books of common sense. Do you remember in our Lord's Prayer when he said, "On earth as it is in heaven"? Well, what Jesus was saying there is the common sense that you have on heaven, practice on earth. We all face moral mud puddles. I have mud puddles, you have mud puddles, our government has mud puddles, your school has mud puddles. Even your family has them. Well, my study today of the Book of Proverbs is how to handle mud puddles. That's really what the book's all about. What common sense do you apply to the mud hole? That's what the book is all about. Now, you're going to become very skillful if you carefully read the Book of Proverbs, because that book, if you were to put it in our language, was the Old Testament textbook for high school. If you went to high school, and they didn't have them back in those days, because the high school was the family. Mom and dad were the teachers, and the kids, they were the classmates, and that's how they learned. They passed it down from mom to dad, on into that generation. They grow up, they become parents, they pass it on. That's how education in the Old Testament came together. And it was called common sense. Now, when you look at the Book of Proverbs, you're really looking at algebra, you're looking at physics, chemistry, French, maybe trigonometry, some business. They're all in there. Everything that I just stated is all there as part of the common sense book. So if you follow it carefully, you're going to see that you're going to be honoring your parents. You're going to be raising your children. You're going to be handling your money, conducting your sexual lives. You're going to go to work. You're going to exercise leadership. You're going to treat your friends. You're going to be eating and drinking healthy foods, cultivating your emotions, handling your attitudes, even making peace. I doubt if Putin ever read the book of Proverbs. If he did, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing to the Ukrainians right now. In the middle of all that, what I just said is something that's very unique. And it's unique to the Hebrew Bible. And there isn't any other civilization on earth during this time that had what the Jews had. Do you know what they had? They had God. God was the formidable power and authority within their textbook, within their home, and within the lives of their children. And it tells about what we think of him. No other book in the Bible comes even close to dealing with the subjects like you find in the Book of Proverbs. In 1972, a professor of archaeology at the Hebrew Hadassah University in Jerusalem, he took his class on an archaeological dig. And they chose a location where they knew they'd never find anything. Well, he didn't want to find anything because he was teaching his students the expertise in archaeological digging, using their instruments to find artifacts that are ancient. But you have to go very slowly, and you have to be very meticulous. And when you find them, you got to be even doubly careful that they don't fall apart when you hold them. Well, that's what he did. Where do you suppose he decided to go for a dig that he wouldn't find anything? He went to the Ben Gurion Airport over in Tel Aviv. and he went to the north end of the main runway, and there they started their dig. They went the first day, second day, couple of weeks, and then into the third week, the most amazing thing happened. That professor found something. His students dug up something. Do you know what they found? They found the ancient city of Ebenezer. It's mentioned in the Old Testament. A battle was fought there. And as they kept digging, lo and behold, they found a schoolroom. Imagine a classroom. And in the classroom, they found artifacts on clay tablets that came right out of the Book of Proverbs. In other words, they dug into the textbook. And there, as they were digging, they couldn't believe what they found. Now, we're talking 1,200 years before Jesus. And they were at this all this time, teaching. In other words, the Book of Proverbs is over 3,000 years old, but it's still right up to date. The book of common sense. Imagine. Now, in these writings that they dug up, there were readings, there was mathematics, there was business administration, there was moral education. And on some of the tablets, the teacher had even made corrections. And the corrections were, and this is where the professor really came alive, he found that when they were reading and doing their writing, it was like when I was in the one-room schoolhouse. We didn't have paper like I'm using now. All we had was a slate tablet. So we had a piece of chalk, and on that slate tablet, that's where I would learn to read, and that's where I learned to write. But you know what I was taught? Memorize. Now, that's a swear word in our society, I know, but they memorized. And here in this text, when they dug up the old schoolroom, there at the end of the runway in Tel Aviv, here they found the teacher treating that clay tablet almost like a slate board, and they were writing with probably a little pencil, or maybe it was like a nail, and he was making corrections. That's not what the text said, so they would have to correct it, and that's what he found. And that was a long time ago. Now, two things were very evident. One, the student in the ancient times, he had to learn how to make a living. The second thing, and this is most important when it comes to common sense, he learned how to live. I can take students across the road over here to the University of Calgary, where our church is, and they can learn all kinds of subjects, from medicine to mathematics to physics to chemistry, business. They're learning how to make a living. But I'm here to tell you, class, there are very few professors over there in front of their classroom that really teach their children how to live. That's my job. That's what the Book of Proverbs is all about. That's what your job is as a parent. You grandparents that are listening, tell the grandkids. They're going to listen to you because you've got a voice and you've got a message, and they're going to hear you. The words from the first chapter of Proverbs were found in those first clay tablets that they found in the schoolhouse. Verse 2 of chapter 1. Attain wisdom, discipline for understanding. Understand these proverbs and parables. There it was. Verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Chapter 3, verse 6 and 7. Remember these findings in the ancient school classroom of Ebenezer. They were 700 years before the Greek civilization. The Greeks came along, and they had a wonderful philosophy. Let me tell you the difference between what the Greeks taught and what the Hebrews learned. First, the Jewish foundation had this for their foundation. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of common sense. If you don't fear him, you don't have any common sense. Common sense starts when you fear him. That was the philosophy of the Jewish teaching. Do you know what the philosophy was of the Ionian, the Greek teaching was? It was reason. You don't need wisdom. You just got to think it out. And when you think, It's then that you can use your human mind and you can use a rational approach. You know, we've used rational approaches for the silliest things in our society, and we think they're right. We're living in a day when you don't have to discipline a child. If you read through the Book of Common Sense, this Book of Proverbs, over and over again, the word discipline comes up when God is telling the parent, this is how you raise your children. And God never apologized for that. In the ancient biblical world, more was said about education in the Old Testament than anything we read in the New Testament. The book of Ecclesiastes spoke of doubt. The book of Job spoke of suffering. The book of Proverbs talks about education and the fear of the Lord beginning common sense. To a Jew, the revelation of God was the Word of God. When he read the book, God spoke to him. When you read your Bible, does God speak to you? You should. It hasn't changed. It's been there all these years and nothing has changed. The path of education began in the home. That was the starting point. Well, that hasn't changed in the education system of the Jews, even up till today. The book of Proverbs, as I say, is that book of common sense. Now, there are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. And in that book, I'm going to tell you 3 images. Maybe the images will help you think it through as to what it was that made up the book. First, the first image, it was a large jewelry box. It was full of pearls. But when those pearls were placed in the box, there was no string holding them together, just a bunch of pearls. And they weren't connected, but they were just the same beauty and still the same pattern. Let me give you an example. I'd rather live in an attic with a leaky roof than in a gorgeous palace with a brawling woman. Now, what does that make sense? You got the one, you got the other. Well, here's another one. Slack habits and sloppy work are as bad as vandalism. Chapter 18:9. Here's another one. Find a good spouse, wife. Find a good spouse and you've found a good life. And even more, if you find her, you found favor with God. Boy, that's good common sense. Now, here's another image. Drugstore. Did you know the book of Proverbs is really a pharmacy? There are 31 rows of shelves. Those are the chapters. And in each shelf, there are bottle after bottle of pills. And those pills are for everything. Every moral ailment under the sun has a pill for it. For every predicament. Laziness. A farmer, too lazy to plant in the spring, has nothing to harvest in the fall. Chapter 20, verse 4. Here's another one. Discipline. Discipline your children while they'll still have a chance. But don't indulge them, because if you do, you'll destroy them. Chapter 19, verse 18. Here's one on cheating. God hates cheaters, especially in the marketplace. Rigged scales are an outrage. They'd go down and they would maybe weigh out some meal, maybe some wheat, and they would have a weigh scale over here against this one over here, and there they would balance. Well, over here they'd cheat. They'd have the wrong weight so that the poor guy that bought it, he was shortchanged. He was cheated. God says that's an outrage. What about telling the truth? Love and truth form a good leader. Sound leadership is founded in loving integrity. I like that one. Chapter 20, verse 28. Fads. Young people love fads. Do you think there's anything in the book of Proverbs and Common Sense that talk about fads? Listen to this. Young people are prone to foolishness and fads. The cure comes through tough-minded discipline. Don't you like that? Here's the third one, if you want an image. Roll up the rim. You ever gone to Tim's and roll up the rim? It promotes really just a gimmick, but it's a contest. And when you buy a cup of coffee and you see on the side of the cup an arrow that's pointing up to the roof, well, it's pointing up to where you can roll up the rim, and when you do, there's going to be a prize if you've won. And there are all kinds of cute things. You can get a donut, you might get a coffee. If you get a big prize, you could end up with a television, and I guess the super prize would be you win a car. Now, the Book of Proverbs is like the roll up the rim. You don't know what you're getting. Every verse is a roll up the rim. Each verse is a prize, and each prize is different. Here are some examples. Riches. They disappear in the blink of an eye. Wealth sprouts wings and flies away, even into the wild blue yonder. Chapter 23, verse 5. Here's one on conversation. Roll up the rim and look at this one. The right word at the right time is like a custom-made piece of jewelry. Chapter 25, verse 11. Doesn't that say it all? Self-control. A person without self-control is like a house with its doors and windows knocked out. Chapter 25, verse 28. Wow. Is that common sense or what? Try this one. Kids don't like homework. Well, here's a little lesson on homework. If you care for your orchard, you'll enjoy its fruit. If you honor your boss, he will honor you. What is value? Chapter 17, 18. It's stupid to try and get something for nothing or run up huge bills that you can never pay. Boy, that's quite a roll up the rim, isn't it? Here's one for you if you're a senior citizen. Gray hair. I don't have much. If I did. Gray hair is a mark of distinction. The award for God-loyal life. Isn't that cute? Finally, here's another one on happy. A twinkle in the eye means joy in the heart. And good news makes you feel fit as a fiddle. How's that for roll up the rim? Now, if you study a painting closely, you can see a beautiful figure. I'm going to close with an illustration about one of my favorite painters. I do oil painting as a hobby, but I like to watch what the masters have done. My favorite painter in the ancient times was a Dutchman. His name was Rembrandt. Rembrandt did his best paintings when he did paintings of something in the Bible, either Old Testament or New Testament. In the Old Testament, he'd do Daniel in the lion's den. Maybe it was the three figures of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. It could have been David and Goliath. When you come to the New Testament, he did some marvelous paintings. The return of the prodigal son. The woman taken in adultery. The woman at the well. The Good Samaritan. But do you know one of my favorites? You can't see it now because that painting was stolen. And it was stolen from the Boston Museum in the late 1980s. And the people that run the museum, they have left the spot on the wall where that painting was mounted. And they're waiting for the thieves to one day come forth and give it back, because it was the only painting that Rembrandt ever did regarding nautical. It was the only water painting. Here is the boat. Jesus is in the boat. They're in the middle of a storm. They're crossing the Sea of Galilee, and that's what he painted. But you know what's very unique about that painting, class? One of the figures standing at the front of the boat, hanging on to the rigging and hanging on for dear life for his hat in his breast, is who else? Rembrandt himself. He's among the 12. There's Jesus asleep on the back of the boat. And these people are fighting for their dear life because that boat's going down. They're in the worst gale they could ever reach in the middle of the sea. And there is Rembrandt hanging on, and he's looking out. But he has a complexion on his face that's immense. He really isn't afraid. The others their eyes are popping out of their head, but he's not afraid. Because he knows the story. He's read it. He's painting the painting. And he knows that there's not going to be a boat go down if he's on it, if Jesus is on that boat. And that was the setting. And I'm so impressed with him for doing that. Because that tells me that that's kind of me. The Book of Proverbs is like that boat. Jesus is on that boat in the Old Testament. God's there on that boat. And you and I are on that boat and we're looking out in the storm. We're hitting it on all sides. And then Jesus whispers to us in common sense. And he says, this boat will not go down when I'm on board. You are safe and secure because I'm the master of the boat. Trust me. That's the book of common sense that I want to share with you today. I'd like to close my class with a smile from the sunny side of the street. Can I give you one? Years ago, in the little town of Esterhazy over in Saskatchewan, there was a station master who ran the station where the train came through. And one day there was a derailment. The station master's name was Flanagan. And when the train went off the track, the workers came and they got it and they put it back on and then the other trains could move forward. But when he sent his report into headquarters, he was so wordy. He said so many things that he shouldn't have said, and it just went on and on and on. Here's what he said. Dear management, it's springtime. All those birds that have gone south, they've now migrated north, and they've landed somewhere in here, and we're just happy to have them all back. So he talked about the migrating birds. Then he talked about the fields. Oh, this year's going to be a wonderful crop. We're not sure if the farmers are going to balance between canola or wheat, but it's there. It's coming. It's going to be a beautiful time. The children are just about ready after recess to get back into their holidays. And on he went, word after word. And then as an ending, it just simply said, by the way, there was a derailment. The train went off the track, and I guess that's what I should report. Well, he got a letter back from management, and it said, Dear Flanagan, next time there's a derailment, don't give me all of that, of what's going on in Esterhazy. Would you mind just telling the facts? Did the train go off the track? Did they get it back on the track? Is the track clear? Can the next rail go through? Can the train go through? Well, it wasn't long after that there was another accident, and there was a derailment. Well, Flanagan, he thought, oh boy, I got a letter from management. I better make this brief. I better tell him exactly what happened. So, class, here's what he wrote back. Dear management, it was in again. It was off again, it was on again, and it went out again. Flanagan. Thanks for coming by. The clock has gone past my time. See you next week. So glad to have you here.